I couldn't believe I was doing this. I was pretty sure sometime over the last week, my body and brain had been taken over by an alien life force that was making me act the opposite of how I normally acted. Even before I was scared of my own shadow, I wasn't the type that went out of my way to seek attention from the opposite sex. Making boys drool and collecting broken hearts was more up my older sister's alley. I tended to be the girl that only spoke when spoken to. I was always shy and hesitant, especially when I was around someone I found attractive. I'd had more than one man tell me that it was endearing. Little did I know, my obvious uncertainty about my own appeal and allure clearly marked me as prey to those same men. I was an easy target. Something I swore to myself I would never be again. Which was why there was no logical explanation for why I found myself currently parked in front of a very industrial-looking building as I tried to work up the courage to go inside. The garage was on the outskirts of downtown Denver, tucked away among factories and buildings that were now gentrified and redeveloped into upscale apartments and trendy eateries near Coors Field. The garage looked like it had escaped every dime of big money sunk into making Lodo prime real estate. It was a throwback to when this part of the city was still rough and unsafe for people to be out walking their little dogs on designer leashes after dark. The bricks on the outside had faded paint, from when the garage was some kind of shipping warehouse. The old paint blended in with the newer graffiti that the owner hadn't bothered to power wash away. There was also a mural, a beautiful depiction of the Rocky Mountains, that stood off in the distance. It covered all three of the massive metal doors that allowed the cars access in and out of the building. It was a statement piece, one that was impossible to miss. It softened the entire feel of the building and the tall metal fence with its wide gate that surrounded it. I knew that one of the guys who owned the tattoo shop where both my sister and her boyfriend worked had painted the mural in trade. Wheeler, the guy I was here to see, if I ever got up the nerve, worked on Nash Donovan's muscle car. And in turn, Nash had turned the garage doors into something that even the most dedicated taggers and graffiti artists appreciated too much to deface. Salem, my sister, mentioned that Wheeler was never opposed to a solid trade, which explained why the majority of the mechanic's skin was inked in colorful images, courtesy of Nash and the rest of the artists who worked at the Saints of Denver. I was used to being surrounded by heavily tattooed individuals. Heck, my sister started marking her flawless golden skin before she was legally old enough to get a tattoo in order to annoy my father. However, Hudson Wheeler was by far the most decorated human I had ever come across. The designs swirled up each side of his neck and across his throat. They dropped down over his wrists and splayed wide across the back of his hands. He had artwork across his chest, and it crawled from the base of his hairline all the way to the top of his jeans across his back and abdomen. He was a walking art installation. And while all that ink and color might have been overwhelming on someone else, with the graceful, thoughtful way he moved and the quiet, measured way he spoke, all the color and noise that covered his body worked for the man that was known as Wheeler. I figured out after the first time I met him that his skin was telling the world his story, because he didn't want to be bothered with repeating it over and over again. My father would be appalled by the way Hudson Wheeler looked. He would hate everything about him. That meant I allowed the trickle of attraction that had worked its way through the fear and doubt that suffocated me on a daily basis to take root and grow. Anything that my dad disapproved of was something that I was more than willing to embrace with open arms. I was late to defiance, but did it ever feel good? Taking a deep breath and tapping my fingers on the steering wheel, I looked over at the little box that was on the seat next to me. A small grin tugged at my mouth when my eyes landed on the contents. I had no